is my weekly event live on the acorn brain, what I call the small minded thinker that resides in me and it resides in all of us, I think. And so, small minded thinking limits what's possible in our life. And we have all those thoughts as human beings. And so, what do you do about them? And what's the reason for them? And people often will share with me some of their thinking. And my question is, does that sound small minded? And it's especially impactful for leaders and people that own a business, right? Their goal is to have people around them that they can share some of their abundance and wealth with in the form of wages, and they want more sales, more productivity, and yet often they bring their own small-minded thinking into the equation, and then they model small-minded thinking, and then their employees begin to model it. I have a few stories to tell if you'll indulge me. So I've witnessed the impact of small-minded thinking on people's businesses. And so I worked once with a company that their leadership is ensconced in small-minded thinking, berating others, sharing way too much personal information, even thoughts that I think edged on HR violations. And as managers, they didn't realize the behavior that was resulting in, that it was encouraging small mindedness, acorn brain thinking amongst their employees. And then they wondered why the business struggled, why they had declining sales. And then I had an experience in a business where the small minded thinking was indifference, meaning the owners didn't speak up about anything. And when they tried to do something, often their executive team was sabotaging them, running to certain factions in the company and tattling on the owners. Hey, here's what the owners are going to do. And then they would get short circuited because those that had these little fiefdoms would go and tell them, you're not going to do this. We heard about it. And they wouldn't. They had indifference. And indifference equals acceptance. It's a tacit approval of a behavior. And so their business was running amok and eventually folded. It sold for a fraction of what it was worth, about a 20th of what it was worth. And so there's a cost to small minded thinking. And what we forget is we live in something infinite. We live in something infinite. I call it a miracle. I had a near death experience on November 18th, 2002. I'll share more about that. My new birthday is upcoming shortly, the 18th. I'll share more about that. But what I can share right now is there was no small minded thinking. I mean, immediately we move into a knowing. There is a what's next. But in that knowing, when I got back in my hospital bed in intensive care, when I say I got back, my presence came back into my body. I was able to notice the difference between being in the physical and being in the non-physical. In the physical, I had all those small-minded thoughts occur again, such as anything self-limiting, anything about doubt, anything with fear, anything that judges others, anything that's a reaction. Those are all small minded thoughts that impact our results in life. Fear is a limiting thought. And most people don't spend any time developing what I call a level of thinking above their thinking. That's the first step to overcoming the acorn brain. Who is the thinker of the thought? You are. And so you can manage that thinking when you don't allow the automatic thought to lead to an automatic reaction, which probably 95% of the time is not healthy. And we expect people around us to just allow it. Well, that's who I am. I hear that a lot. No, I call BS on that. It's not who you are. It's who you've allowed yourself to become. And you can manage all small minded thinking and expand into something much larger and broader. It might be listening. It might be not responding. It might be, let me think about that. Let's take some time and develop a plan. But again, any small minded, limited thinking is limiting all those around you and yourself, and it's not modeling whatever created this universe. We call it a universe to give it definition, but it's not. Any small minded thought does not model whatever created this. I don't care what you call it. And faith is an infinite thought, and it's not about a religious faith, and it can be. It can be religious, whatever works for you to expand into the limitless thinking, infinite possibility thinking. What's possible here? What's new? What makes us uncomfortable? How can we grow during this experience? How can we have an infinite response and not sink into the acorn brain and sadness and depression and self-judgment, self-limiting thoughts? All those are believing the acorn brain. And so developing a level of thinking above your thinking and reminding yourself you live in a miracle. And again, whoever for you created this miracle, physicists don't even know. They don't even know. They're getting closer, I think. But a few months ago, a group of physicists in Chicago reported that they observed atomic particles acting in unexpected ways. They wrote about it. It wasn't what they were used to seeing as a response in these super collider experiments. Now, I chuckled because we've all experienced unexpected things occurring. It's just part of life. Those around us act unexpectedly in our business, our families, and even those people out in public, in supermarkets and stores. We see all kinds of unexpected events occurring. It's just part of life. But the small-minded thinker had the physicist thinking, this is shocking. We have to produce this report. Google it. You'll see. It's amazing to me that we don't have a process to exercise our brains. We go to the gym, resistance in weights, and maybe it's been a while for me, but resistance with weights and running, and they build our ability to live physically. We gain more strength, we gain more endurance. But resistance in life is actually building, it's there for good, to build our resistance, to build our muscle for living. The resistance builds our muscle for living. The acorn brain has most people running from any resistance in life. The escapes are numerous. We think of people with drugs and alcohol and video games and binge watching, and we all escape, right? But there's so many opportunities to escape, especially in Western societies, and it's too easy to just settle for escape. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have things that take us away from whatever thoughts we're having, or that we shouldn't do things that put us in a frame of mind that takes us away from the acorn brain. But not if it's an escape, if it's a hobby and a passion and something you love to do, going to walk for a walk by the beach, anything that takes us into being fully in the moment, which was the other thing I learned on my near-death experience. There was only the now. There was no past or future. And fascinating, there was no small-minded thinking. So it's humans that want people to pay for their mistakes here, which we all do, small or medium or large mistakes. We pay, even if it's just carrying the shame and guilt, if we never get caught, if we committed a crime. But even if we gossiped about someone and we feel bad later, the thing is, we're carrying shame, and it's the human mind that says, now I want you to burn in hell forever. And yes, we've been taught that in all kinds of books. Writers in all different faiths have talked about that. And to me, anything fear-based, controlling, is the acorn brain. That even those writers, while inspired by the infinite, sucked themselves in. They sucked themselves into the acorn brain. They settled and said, you must behave a certain way or it's sin. Only the good I had done was mentioned in my near-death experience, by the way. It flashed before me. Think about that. Think about how you feel when you do good. And going to burn in hell forever is small-minded thinking, and it doesn't exist on the other side. And I've heard that from many other people, by the way. You can go on YouTube and Google near-death experiences. There's many that have shared that same experience, that we're essentially good. And then ask yourself, how do you feel when you do good? So anything small-minded is when you make judgments of other people, when you react about certain things, and then you want them to pay forever. Vengeance, right? Revenge. Those are small-minded thoughts. When the infinite is infinite everything, and it's a knowing, by the way. We have a knowing when we leave our body. It's not the way we think here. It's hubris and egoic humans that think we have all the answers. And obviously we're running the earth. There's an amazing intelligence around us that in our own galaxy, we have 200 billion suns, stars, exposed nuclear fusion plants is what they are. And we take all that for granted. But there's a lesson in it when we surrender that we don't know it all. And we're open to expanding our thinking from narrow-minded to open-minded. I mean, today, look at all the opportunities to point the blame at people. It's everywhere. One side makes the other side wrong, and I'm not on a side. I'm just saying it's all crazy thinking, which is why I wrote the books, You Might Be Full of Shit If, and I discuss where we're all have to get over ourselves. And then the other one is, You May Be Full of Number Two, After All We Know Better, the woke edition. It's not about making fun of the woke or making fun of everyone, because I'm full of it somewhere. I get it. I have a sense of humor. I'm not supposed to be perfect. That's what this existence is about. And the acorn brain never goes away. You don't master it. It's a journey. I still have those thoughts, some days more than others. And I've developed a practice that's supported by many others, by the way, of a level of thinking above my thinking. And I have to go to that neuro gym every day to work out my mind. So like physical activity works out our body, we need some activity and a process that helps us work out in the neuro gym so that we can overcome that small-minded thinking. And it's amazing when you start a practice like that, but don't take my word for it. Begin to look at where you have small-minded thoughts. Maybe it's petty arguments at home. Maybe it's making others wrong at work. Maybe it's gossip. Maybe it's sharing too much, TMI. Maybe as a leader, you're not open to other people's ideas. Or you like to call people out right on the spot in front of others. It's all small-minded thinking. And to model that which we live in is forgotten. We live in something that we have to give a term to define it. It's limitless. And in the limitless, right, I went from my body in intensive care 1 second with two friends at the end of my bed. Next second, I was one with everything and nothing. And it was just a knowing. And then there was the life review, only the good I had done. And then I was asked a question, stay or go. To which my knowing, my consciousness there replied, thy will be done. I surrendered to the moment unlike any other time before. And I'm embarrassed to say I was 50. I had mostly spent my life fighting life, like Eckhart Tolle says. When you fight life, life fights you. That was my experience. And now, when something doesn't fit my plan, the acorn brain, my plan, I think about what the other thing that Eckhart Tolle says. He says, breathe when something comes in that you want to react to and say, oh, this must be the plan, and go with it. But you have to prove all this to yourselves. Don't take my word for it. If I ever say I found the way, run away. In my books, I write about never blindly following anything, and we can see all the examples of it. In fact, in the New York Post was an article about a group of people who are starting a new university where they're going to be inviting the brightest and best students to be in a consciousness of learning about looking at all sides. I'm withholding the laughter. All sides of things, thinking about all sides of things, all points of view. They have to encourage it, and they're starting a new university, and they're already getting a response. And most of them, these investors that are starting the University of Austin, you can Google it, are liberal minded. It was liberals many years ago who thought of, hey, let's listen to all sides, all thought, free thinkers. And today it's lost on all sides because we're just making each other wrong, and it's small minded thinking. And that's the same thing that limits you everywhere, making others wrong, having to be right. By the way, when you have to be right, it makes many others wrong. Now, you could be right, and it could lead to a great discussion. Let's talk about this because I have an idea. I'm not sure if I'm right. I think I'm right, but let's talk about it. Instead, what a lot of people do today is make others wrong, and that's narrow mindedness. And you can see it, believe it or not, in colleges and universities where they were supposed to be taking a narrow mind and expanding it into an open mind. And instead, what's occurring is professors and teachers are teaching people what to think. And if you don't fit a certain narrative, you're excluded, even to the point of people feeling unsafe around those that think differently from them. It's fascinating what we've come to living in a universe where all of a sudden we'd like everyone to think the same. And so these investors are creating a new university with the mission statement that they're going to embrace thinking and teaching people how to think about all sides of issues. What they found, by the way, what spurred them into this investment was they found that innovation and advances were lacking in the United States because free thinking, how to think, looking at all sides of issues was being challenged, was being limited. And so there's another example of how small minded, narrow minded, limited thinking, acorn brain thinking is actually impacting us in a negative way. So I'm grateful that this is occurring because it fits right into what I'm talking about. I'm not taking sides. I'm saying be open, and be open as a leader, be open as a salesperson. Most salespeople are taught to go push what they have to sell. How about a conversation, what I call helping people buy? I also wrote the book, Helping People Buy. It's a natural way to have a dialogue with people to understand what are they looking for? What if they're not a fit for you? Or what if you're not a fit for them? Would you send them somewhere else? Or would you push them to buy something, sell them something because you've got a quota and your boss is telling you or asking you, what did you sell lately? It's small minded thinking. Instead of helping people win by identifying who's the best targets, who are the ideal clients that you already have in your book, who are the next level down, the good clients. And then every company has clients that have a higher cost to serve. They're not the best clients, and yet we don't define them. I'm not saying all companies, many don't, because they're just get the sale, we'll figure out how to make money. But imagine the conversation that goes like this: Mr. Customer, we can't serve you anymore. The cost to serve you, it just doesn't work for us anymore. Wouldn't it be better to have that dialogue up front? We're looking for a fit. I want to make sure we're a fit for you. I want to make sure you're a fit for us. And at some point in time, we'll both figure that out. And if I'm not a fit for you, I do have a few people that I can refer you to. Right now, you're a solution to a problem, and that's infinite thinking, limitless thinking. It's very different. It's very different. Now, you may also be judging this right now, saying, well, I don't know if he really had a near death experience. That's okay, too. You have to take my word for it. Someday we'll all experience what's next. Now, not all of us come back. That's true. I can't explain that process. But I can tell you, I survived two major events. 5 days earlier, on November 13th, I was doing a seminar for a group of people. It wasn't on Zoom or Vimeo. So I was doing a seminar, and 1 second I was fine. I never had any symptoms. The next second, I needed an ambulance. Talk about learning how to be in the now. I had no choice. I needed an ambulance. And I learned later, a few days later, that I had a blockage in my pancreas. Never had any symptoms. I have a calcium blockage. Then 5 days later, on the 18th, I had an acute myocardial infarction as a result of the challenge of the pancreatitis, the acute necrotizing pancreatitis. Google it. I had two major events. I survived them both. And on the 18th at around 2 o'clock, as I found out later, of course, when doctors shared with me what I had gone through, and the two friends at the end of my bed shared this. Oh, yeah, Steve, that was Monday, the 18th at around 2 o'clock, because doctors and nurses came running in and said, out, this is it, call his family. And so being on the other side, I had this gift that I'm now bringing everywhere, and I have been in smaller ways for the whole 19 years. And now I know that this is something to share with people, to consider, though. Prove it to yourself. You don't have to have a near death or what's next experience. And I hope you don't before this video is over. And I wish you all a long life, but we don't know when. We don't know when. It's only the ego that fears death instead of living every moment. When Einstein was asked, do you believe in God? He answered it like this: I believe in the God of Spinoza. He wanted people to look up who Spinoza was. Baruch Spinoza, if you're going to Google it later, he renamed himself Benedict Spinoza. But he talked about living, that this is our gift. And that's true too about leadership, about anything we do in life, about being home, is to live in the moment, to embrace everything, and to question your own thinking. Osho wrote a book called Your Answers Questioned. And I believe and suggest that's a journey for everyone to try, test it out. Because if you believe all your thinking and you're living life as Landmark would call, if you've ever done the forum or asked or any Landmark training, they call it you're a reaction. You're living as a reaction. And believing the acorn brain, I'll tell you that what happens is we have a story we tell ourselves, whether it's about our parents, our teachers, our childhood, maybe it's about your job now and your boss or your coworkers. The acorn brain has us gathering evidence to prove the stories we tell ourselves are true. Unless we break that chain, starting with developing that level of thinking above our thinking, we gather evidence and then we tell others about our story, and it becomes the self-limiting factor in our lives because we don't consider anything else. Again, we're believing that little small-minded thinker. Now that's up to you. You can continue to live in the small-minded thinking and believe it and let it limit you. But I'm going to give you a few resources now that might help you. So one is the book, Are You Ready to Succeed? Written a long time ago by Dr. Srikumar Rao, who was teaching this kind of thinking above your thinking and about the small-minded thinker and limited thinking in another course at Columbia. And his students started asking him, can you teach us more about this, a level of thinking above our thinking, the observer level, and overcoming small-minded thinking? And that became a course, which now he trains other people. I believe it's syndicated or licensed, how to do that. Another great book is by Dr. Roland Alexander, Wise Mind, Open Mind. He also talks about it. Another great book, I have it here, is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. The Big Leap. And he talks about upper limit problems. And again, it was perfect when I found the book, and I've been rereading it and listening to it on Audible. It's available all those places, Amazon, bookstores. He talks about the upper limit problem, which again is small minded, limited thinking, and how it impacts us everywhere. And he gives a process of how to investigate it for yourself. So that's what I encourage people to do. Make your life an experiment. Make your life a questioning your answers. And if you're wasting time on social media, wasting time on tweets that or commenting on people's tweets that you disagree with, I mean, I don't even pay attention to them. My followers have grown to over 7,000, and it's happening naturally by just posting my beliefs, and I pay no attention to comments. In fact, most people don't rail against them because I'm pointing out small-minded thinking. I'm pointing out people that think in a broader fashion. You know, when we think of our media today, and journalists have lost their way, they were about the truth at one time and pursuing the truth and not reporting until they did. Can you imagine if Watergate turned out to be a rumor? But no, they pursued it until they got the facts and did something good with it, right? The outcome was great. And we have plenty of examples today where the media jumps to a conclusion because it fits a narrative, and then they become commentators. They're not reporters. They're trying to sway people. And that's where I say never blindly follow anything. I don't turn into any of those news stations because it's a waste. It's mostly not the truth. I question everything, and I do not take a position until I've researched all the facts for myself, and then I make a choice. We can find all those places where people followed others blindly. I mean, despots have gotten millions of people to follow them. Mussolini, Hitler, many others through history. Horrible outcomes. And yet they got the masses to follow them. And it started with narrow-minded, small-minded thinking. But then we can go to people like Jerry Jones and the sneaker cult, or Jim Jones, I think it was, where eventually everyone drank the Kool-Aid. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Don't ask others to drink the Kool-Aid around you. Just make your life an experiment of expanding your small-minded thinking, overcoming it. See what occurs by accepting and allowing others to have different points of view for a discussion. I'm going to leave you with this last thought. There's 2 minutes to go. I had a coach who asked me many years ago, Steve, do ants know they live next to a bridge abutment, let alone a bridge? And I thought, no, probably not, right? They're in their own little small world, gathering food, taking care of their tribe. And then I realized that's us. Are we ants next to a bridge abutment, living in a universe? We can't even see the bridge because we believe our small-minded thinker. Try it for yourself. Work on it. See if it has value. I'm glad to help. I'm available for speaking engagements about this topic. If it's a community group, I'll gladly speak for free. If it's within my travel zones, I'm glad to speak at companies to help companies expand this, and I have in many places. This is my work today. You can email me, steve@stevelentini.com, and I'll spell that, Steve, I hope you know that, at Steve Lentini, L as in Linda, ENTINI.com. It's what I do. I have lots of resources about it. I have lots of courses. And in January, I have a course on self-awareness coming that'll be online, where I go into greater detail about all this thinking. And then every Friday, I'll be doing that here live at 1 o'clock. I'm just looking at my Vimeo screen, pardon me. I need a producer. Live, 1 p.m. every Friday, giving these tips free because I want people to succeed. I want people to have lives of abundance, success, and love that's beyond anything